got here for what will actually be the last time here on Flip That Script. Today, on this last video, what I wanted to talk to you about is kind of the last step, last leg of this journey, of your own journey in standing up to, confronting, or somehow dealing with emotionally abusive, toxic, narcissistic family members, even if you should choose to do something short of no contact. And also did want to mention that there may be cases where you don't need to go as far as no contact. I had mentioned that a therapist that I've worked with has a father who she considers to be kind of mid-range on the spectrum of narcissism, and low contact works for her. But regardless, in terms of waking up to, healing from, grieving, and setting whatever kinds of boundaries that you need to with toxic, abusive family members, there kind of comes a time, and I find this to kind of go in conjunction with and sort of follow what I talked about in the next to last video, the previous video, which is making some kind of meaning out of your experience and finding kind of purpose and so forth, giving meaning and purpose to your experience. Is there kind of comes a time where, as you go through your process, that you almost kind of need to close this chapter, this difficult chapter, or let's just say going through abuse is difficult, but so is the chapter of having to get strong and confront this issue in some way with those family members and make difficult decisions. There comes a time that you need to close the chapter of you having had to confront it and come to terms with it and make peace with it. And that is the time that you just need to kind of integrate it into your life experience. It certainly has significance, but I would say that you eventually find a way to reduce its significance in your life. And let me qualify that a little bit. I'm saying to reduce its significance in terms of some issues I talked about in some previous videos, which is not allowing it to dominate your mind and your heart and your soul and your spirit so much. So to reduce its significance in terms of lessening its negative impact on you, and also not overly identifying with your experience to the point that it dominates you too much, or more importantly, to not let it overly define you. You reach a point that, again, that you kind of need to close that chapter of your life in which you've made your decisions and are following through on them and have grieved largely and largely healed and made the inner shifts that you need to, so that you find a healthier and happier way forward in your life. Something that I wanted to suggest to you, or at the very least, share with you, is that there were two different points in my life after going no contact that I released helium balloons. One time was about 6 months out, and that was a few months before I decided that I was going to give my father a chance to reconnect and have a different kind of relationship with me. And you guys from watching my channel know what happened with that. But I let go of two balloons, both symbolizing my father and my brother. And then, what would have been over a year later, when it took 9 months for my father to kind of prove that he couldn't meet my reasonable terms of engagement, I let go of one balloon. To me, both times it was a pretty powerful experience to have some kind of symbolic and ceremonial way of signifying this major change in my life, having empowered myself and making these changes, which has, of course, to some degree changed the trajectory of my life, or at least the fact that I have put up a very strong boundary and decided this just does not work for me, and that we can't have a relationship because you can't treat me with decency and dignity and respect. But bottom line is, what I'm saying is that you might want to consider doing something ceremonial, and maybe even more than once. I'm even considering maybe doing this one more time, just in having completed this project of creating this YouTube channel and creating content over the last, that's about 6.5 months. So, an important thing to know is that ultimately, because you can't talk issues and problems out with toxic people, family members or not, the closure with all this really has to happen within you, because sadly you can't have any real closure with them. So there comes a time that I really think that you need to start, and when you're ready, you'll know when the time comes. But at some point in your journey, it's almost like you need to, quote unquote, visit this whole issue and your experience, including when things are at its worst and when you're undergoing the abuse, and then your whole journey out of it. There comes a time that you need to visit it less, which means not only ruminating or thinking about it less, but reading about it less, not getting another book on it, or read more articles on it, or even watch YouTube channels on it. I think there really comes a time that it's time to truly move forward and just figure out how and where to integrate this whole experience into your life's journey, where it isn't like you never visit it anymore, but where you largely shift your focus away from it, provided that you've done the work and the healing. And to move on with your life with much less reliance on, and what I think can easily, unless you consciously make choices about this, you can easily, as I know myself did, get into the habit of watching more YouTube videos when you've already gotten everything out of them that you can, so that you're not always rehashing and going back to the problem. And one of the good reasons to not go back to the problem is that you finally figured out how you're going to greatly reduce or eliminate the problem. So there comes a time when letting go also means having it on your mind less, and having it on your mind less will help you to stop reading and listening about it as often. And then by reading and listening about it less often, it'll also help to reduce the amount of time and mental and emotional energy, etc., that goes into revisiting it, the issue, after you've largely healed and are in a position and in a frame of mind and have your heart and mind and soul in a place where you can simply keep moving forward with a better quality of life, and have largely put this behind you. And perhaps you might want to give some meaning and purpose to it in a similar way to the way that I have, as I have in doing this channel and in having written my autobiography. But again, not something you often hear on YouTube channels on this subject, but I strongly believe that there comes a time that you move forward without needing to revisit and hear about a lot of the same things, over and over again, that you've already learned about. Thank you so much for watching my channel. It's been very therapeutic for myself personally, and kind of being able to pay it forward is how I see it, by becoming yet another source and resource for others, given that I can unfortunately have firsthand experience. And I hope that you have found my information and sharing my experience to be beneficial to you. I wish you healing. I wish you strength. I wish you hope. And I wish you